Forgotten Sunrise, Chapter 25, North. Sunset was completely clueless about hydrogen fuel cells, but she assumed it was somewhat comparable to the hybrid vehicles that she had started to see in her final years in the Rimworld. If this vehicle used petrol, she likely wouldn't be able to sit back here in the bed of the Scouticus Maximus leaning against the barrels without choking on gasoline vapors as the truck headed north over Arctic tundra. Sunny advised her to take in the relaxing scenery while she could, before the frigid cold forced her inside for the final quarter of the journey. Aside from magic fuel teleporting and the Zeppelin-powered military airships, Sunset remembered the quickest way to get around Equestria was the National Rail Network. According to what Sunny had told her, the tracks had long since rotted away, or had been long buried by generations worth of vegetation. The separate tribes were still working on connecting their cities and towns with simple roads, and were still relying on physical maps until Zephyr Heights installed signal towers in between locales. The previous 6 months have been getting better signal strength in Bridlewood and Maritime Bay. It made Sunset wonder what happened to Equestria's other metropolises, such as Las Pegasus and Manhattan. Had they survived? Been razed or abandoned in whatever unrest had befallen Equestria's citizens? Or were they just as isolated as Bridlewood, Maritime Bay, and Zephyr Heights had been, and just weren't aware of each other yet? The vehicle's passenger cabin wasn't as crowded this time either. This trip, it was Sunny, Sprout, Zip, Pip, and herself, with Izzy currently tending to matters in Bridlewood and Hitch handling his office in Maritime Bay, in addition to caring for Ray. The current plan was to spend 2 to 3 days sorting, packing, and loading artifacts into the trailer they were pulling, and then she would disembark at the halfway point home, to head towards Bridlewood to spend some time with Izzy and the other unicorns. The only part of the Crystal Empire she had seen was the interior of the castle when she stealthily approached Twilight's guest room all those years ago. If it weren't for the pictures Pip had taken, she couldn't imagine an entire city buried in ice and snow. But in just about a day's time, she would see it for herself. The food they had packed obviously wasn't up to par to the dishes she had eaten at Maritime Bay's and Zephyr Heights restaurants and castle, but they certainly sufficed for a trip such as this. Finishing the granola bar that she had started a few minutes ago, she got up as she felt a brisk breeze blow her mane from overhead, and figured that the mild temperatures would soon be behind them along with the Arctic tundra. Getting to her hooves, she climbed over to the top hatch, opened it, and slid down the ladder, depositing the granola bar wrapper into the trash can in the corner. Sprout was driving, and Sunny was in the passenger seat reading The History of Magic, one of the first and few ancient books that were in good enough condition that Cantrologic was able to reprint them. The Earth Pony wasn't able to hide her disappointment, but she took Sunset's suggestion and left the Class 5 spell tomes right where they were in what used to be Cantrolot Library's restricted section. Sunset figured after spending some time in Bridlewood with Izzy, she could finally earn some bits at Cantrologic, by helping Sunny go through what was undoubtedly going to be a few metric tons of books that they were going to pull out of the Crystal Empire's library. The trailer Sprout had built was climate controlled all the way down to 0 degrees, so they would be able to keep them in their frozen or near frozen states for the journey back south, which the Earth Stallion warned may take a bit longer with the added weight. There wasn't enough time to get fitted for cold weather gear of her own, but without Izzy on this trip, she was a close enough fit. Pip was currently playing an offline game on her phone since they had lost all phone signals a day and a half ago.
Hey there, Sunny.
Sunset checked in, coming up to the passenger seat. She held herself upright by grabbing one of the straps bolted to the ceiling in between the driver and passenger seats.
How's the book?
Sunny glanced at her with a look of disappointment.
I'm just thinking about something I said back when I was almost a fool. Playing with my dolls with Hitch and Sprout, I was quite adamant when I said that ponies never use their magic against each other. That couldn't have been farther from the truth. The more I discover about equestrian history, the more I realize that magic was almost always involved in every single conflict. Nightmare Moon, Trixie Lulamoon, Queen Chrysalis, Starlight Glimmer, Tempest Shadow, all of them wielded powerful magic of one kind or another. It's not quite the picture my dad painted for me when I was younger.
Sunset smiled down at her as she turns to the next page.
I can see why your dad would teach some pony so young history with a bit of rose-tinted glasses. Yeah, magic, or magical artifacts, were frequently the source of conflict throughout equestrian history. But don't let that discourage you. Whenever nefarious ponies threatened us, heroes rose up to face them. I should know. I have first-hand experience with that, on both sides. And it should also be noted that more than half of the names you just mentioned eventually found the lights. Trixie became the counselor for Twilight School, Starlight became the new headmare, and Tempest, or Fizzlepop Berry Twist, given her name, became the captain of her royal guard. My point is, history is almost always more complicated than books give it credit for, Sunny.
Sunny looked up at her and nodded with a light smile.
Thanks, Sunset. I'll try and remember that.
Sometimes we just need some bite-sized stories and chapters. Anywho, let's get on to our optimistic donators. Top donators are 630, BadassWaffle, Only One Thing, Ceru, Orion, IronSky, and Jessie Smith. Darkside, Rayden, Narwhals, Blackmoonheart, Pastel Skies, Austin, Rolan, Stu, Hex, Sword, Butler, Mordred, Omicron, Lyrae, Winside, 9852, Will, Chris, Twinkie, Right Soul, Shadow Moon, Luigi 88, Chancer Crust, Big Smoke 369, Bobcat, GGF, and many more amazing people. Thank you all so much for watching this video and live life to the fullest.